All right, so 625, 630, real quick. Did I think a pretty good job of outlining. Most of it's about civil service reform. At this point, civil service reform is the feature of the next couple of presidential elections and campaigns therein, because the division that we see right now, the spoil system and things like that, which we know has changed since Jackson's time. So if you go to the bottom of 625, that's where I started. Civil service reform, textbook will go right into how this is something that's really kind of starting during Hayes' administration, and the fact that it's just gotten so out of control where people are asking too much of these would-be presidents, and they want what they want. You'll get my vote, you'll get my support, you'll get the support of the people I represent if you give me a job in your administration, and I have the job, not just for your administration but others. Becomes a problem. So, purpose of the system to reform the system, that is really about getting the best people in the right jobs and people that you can trust. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of lean with that. If you look at the top of page 626 under civil service reform, there's certain people that say we should pick people. I'm looking at the quote at the bottom of that first paragraph: gentlemen who need nothing and want nothing from government except the satisfaction of using their talents. So it should be about talent, be about merit. Get the right people in the right places, okay? So what are some of the aspects of politics that show the momentum toward reform is not working? Well, there's a lot, actually. And the biggest part is Garfield, right? James Garfield, president only for a few months and then shot. He's assassinated. And he's assassinated by a person who was refused a job, okay, who thought he had a job as part of the spoil system. So he's killed. But, this is, we can't trust them. It's not just about people not getting a job they want. That's something that's going to bother a person without a doubt. Okay, this is about a promise that was made to somebody. Okay, a promise for support, and when that support was given, the promise was not carried through. And unfortunately for Garfield, he is shot and killed. Okay, so that is the link. I'm basically answering that question. But how does this change momentum? Well, you know what? I hate to bring up something like this, but the Sandy Hook thing, the elementary school shooting, that is a huge turning point for gun control, right? As soon as that happened, you saw everybody was up in arms. It was, and rightly so. What a terrible episode of American history that was recently. But this is something. The president's been shot. It hasn't happened since Lincoln. That, of course, was a momentous shift in thinking for Reconstruction. This is the same thing for civil service reform. All right, so now you have a Congress, and a presidency actually that will be actually strengthened by this. They'll be a little empowered by this. So the Pendleton, Civil Service Act is one of those things that will show their power a little bit more. Okay, it's not the greatest thing in the world. All right, but what did it do? And if you go here, you can look at the bottom of page 626. The last paragraph on it will give you some of those ideas. Something that's quizzical, certainly, something you should definitely look at. Okay. Tariff laws. Things shift completely at 627 to the political life of the tariff, and looking at that area there. Republicans are in favor of the use of high tariffs. We said to this point that tariffs help domestic business. They protect domestic business. That's why a lot of times people call them protective tariffs. Okay, protectionism is another way of saying that you're of the mindset that tariffs are a good way to go in life, okay, or in society, in your political life. All right, so how do Democrats argue the opposite? They say it would encourage foreign trade, which it would to a degree. Of course, that would help them because they are the ones who are the farmers. They have the raw materials. They want to get them out at this point in time. Limit the actions of government, right? They believe in a laissez-faire government, which is sort of a hypocrisy there, right? Because a lot of these same people have the same voices who've been saying that they're concerned over being taken advantage of as farmers, and the government should step in to a certain degree. The difference, guys, is that they believe in the state government, right? They're still states' rights advocates. Even these same Democrats are the guys that fought in the Civil War on the southern side. So they want some government support, but just like the sub-treasury plans we've discussed in the past, they don't necessarily want it from the federal government. They want it from the state government. So laissez-faire from the standpoint of the federal government, who is collecting the tariffs. From the tariffs go to the federal government, not the state governments. So they don't believe in tariffs, even though although they you think it would help them to a degree. Laissez-faire idea. I hope that makes sense. Understand that they want to limit the action of the government at the federal level. The state level, I'm being redundant now. So how does the issue of tariffs further divide the country's politics? Well, it divides it a lot, right? It divides it so much that you actually have a president, the first time elected in non-consecutive terms, right? Cleveland's in office He doesn't really say much at all about tariffs, and that is the big issue after civil service. After civil service, tariffs are the issue. These are the two big issues of the day. Okay, so the idea is Cleveland's not talking about Harrison is Cleveland actually wins the popular vote, but Harrison wins the electoral vote. So the 1888 election is a very storied election for that reason too. Is that you have a president who becomes president, but actually does it without popular vote, which we've seen before. We've seen that now, more recently in 2000, right, Bush versus Gore. So, which was another storied election of that time. All right, and again, you'll want to look at all these things. All right, but all these things, whether it be the assassination of Garfield or just finally enough emphasis on things being wrong or what have you, there's so many reasons why. All right, but now we have regulation. Finally, federal regulation, for better or worse. And a lot of these, Democrats don't want it. A lot of the Republicans saying yes, and it goes into the tariff thing and all this other stuff. Okay, so some of these ideas have sort of flip-flopped over time. So what are the powers that are following? We talked about the Sherman Antitrust Act to a degree. The textbook does a nice job of bringing it up again. We talked about the Grange and the farmers that exist and what we call the Grange. Right, you have Granger laws; those are the state level. Right, so you have different obvious difference here should be for us is that you have federal law, state laws. Again, and you have two federal decisions in the Supreme Court. The federal government has the right to regulate for public use, right? Anything they feel is for public use. So in Munn versus Illinois in 1877, you see, again, this goes back before these things. I want to make that clear. All right. So the Supreme Court's actually upholding some right of federal government to regulate things. Right? But in 1886, my question is, how does that change? All right. So look at that. I think that brings us pretty much to the end, except for the money question, which we'll look at next time. That's a huge idea here. But as you can see, there's a lot of economic parts to this, which we've gone into. Okay, not all the way, but now the politics kind of overlay over all these things. How did that all come about? All right. Remember, notes. You can use notes for this again. I hope you do. The money question thing. You should still note, guys. Might be on the quiz, might not. I might even do another step. I was thinking about doing a separate screencast just for the money question because I have a book at home that's really good, and it's really a really difficult thing. The gold versus silver idea, and it gets back into the Wizard of Oz thing. How the people didn't understand why I brought it up. Actually, at that point, I don't know why I brought it up either. But now, it's relevant. All right, I'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend, guys.